are, Brattleboro's community talk show. I'm Wendy O'Connell, and today on our show we have Beverly Miller. Beverly is a mother, an expressive arts therapist, and an actor. She's currently a chapter leader and facilitator for the Compassionate Friends, which is a bereavement group for families who have experienced the death of a child. So we welcome today Beverly. Thank you, Bev, for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Wendy.
Yes, it's wonderful to have you. You grew up in Connecticut, which is not very far away, and then at some point you were out in Arizona and lived there for a while.
Yes, 12 years. I had migrated there from Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I met my children's father, actually. I was working in one of the local pubs, and he was a musician, so I ended up following him to Tucson, Arizona.
Yep. A lot of us started out that way, you know, either in a restaurant or playing an instrument, right?
Right.
And what were you doing there?
Well, raising my two kids, and then I was encouraged to check out the local community college, Pima Community College. So I did that. I signed up for a creative dance class there, and I was also involved. I found another class in Tucson. I can't remember what the official name of the class was. It was creative dance / something, yoga or something, and I had the most incredible experience there. I'd been through a lot of therapy, regular talk therapy, for a variety of issues, and the woman leading this class, which I thought was going to be kind of a regular creative dance class, was actually a dance movement therapist. And I suppose because of the result of her knowledge and training, the experience I had in that class became much more than a typical any kind of dance class. I had what I suppose you could call a psychological, emotional, spiritual breakthrough as a result of the movement that this woman was having us do, a variety of movements. But it was just, it's really difficult to describe this sort of thing with words. I knew that something pretty magical had happened for me there. There was a release that I had never felt before. So I started asking her, what was that? What was that? And found out about dance movement therapy, and which is what led me to get into the expressive arts therapy area.
Yeah, it was a seminal moment. And this was 70s?
Yeah.
80s?
Yes, 70s.
So that was early years but the beginning years of all that kind of therapy.
I was also the religious education coordinator at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tucson. There was a wonderful woman working in the office there at that church, Ursula. I was very fond of her, and I really respected and admired her. She was really sharp and intelligent, you know. Well, the sanctuary at that church had this incredibly beautiful piano, and the people who would be playing at the services would come in, and other musicians in town actually would come in to practice on this piano. So whenever I knew there was going to be somebody in there, I'd sneak into the sanctuary and dance, because it had this big open space and the music and the sound effect and acoustics. So I was doing that one time, and Ursula snuck in, and she was watching me, and I didn't know it. When I stopped, she came up to me and said, okay, I want you to do something just on my word. I don't want you to ask me any questions. I just want you to trust me, and I want you to go do this. Okay, what's that? So she said, I want you to go to Pima Community College and sign up for the ASL course. I didn't even know what it was. But she told me I couldn't ask questions. So I went to the creative dance class, and I looked in the American Sign Language? Why does she want me to do that? Well, I know now. It has become some of the most powerful work that I do for myself. I incorporated American Sign Language and even some Native American Sign Language into the dance performance stuff that I've done. And something happens in that combination of elements that is so unique, at least for me. Something happens to me. I even wrote my master's thesis at Antioch about it. It's called the the integration of spirituality, movement and sign language, the therapeutic integration.
Oh, wow.
It was that profound. You know, thesis writing was not a profound event, but I tried to write about it, and that was hard. But the reactions that people had to it when I did it, and I mean, I chose music and lyrics or poetry that had deep meaning for me to begin with. And one of the first times I ever performed it was at Pima Community College, and it just so happened my mom was visiting from Connecticut in Tucson, and I had to do a final project for creative dance and a sign language program. So I put it together so I'd only have to do one final project.
That was smart, yeah.
But we had to perform them. Whatever we created in the dance class, we had to perform them. So my mom was in the audience, and what made me really nervous was that there were a number of deaf students, and they were in the audience, and I'd never, you know, communicated with deaf people except for the instructor in this class. My mom was in the audience, and I did, the piece I did was The Rose. You remember that song?
Yes.
And the way that I ended it, I was down on my knees on the floor and with my eyes closed. And the way it ends is, you know, the rose. And I opened my eyes, and my mom and all the deaf students are weeping.
Oh, wow. Wow. Wow.
Yeah. I was astounded, you know. And I've had very similar occurrences happen when I've done this in various places.
I can feel what you're talking about, and I think a lot of times when you're integrating all the different parts together, you know, the sound and the movement and all of that, and that gets transmitted to an audience, you know, there's a real reciprocity there that, you know, you just don't, you can never know what's going to happen, but when it does, it's magic.
So when I found out about that dance movement therapy, I said, okay, if it works this well for me, I want to be doing this with people. So I decided to check out places where I could study. And there were only two in the country at that time. One was Naropa in Colorado, and the other was Antioch in Keene. And because I had family back here, I decided, okay, I'm doing this. I packed up the kids, came back east. I intended always to go back to Arizona, but it just didn't happen.
Did you go right into movement therapy?
I did the it's a counseling psychology program, dance movement therapy specialty at Antioch. I did that. Let's see, I think I finished in '90. Had a long internship at the retreat, which was remarkable.
And so you continued doing that in Brattleboro, in the area, and you did that for a number of years.
From time to time.
So Bev, you're doing all of your dance therapy and creative dance and living here in town, and then in 2014 you had a real tragedy happen.
Yeah, the worst that could ever happen. I really believe that. My son Nick Mattingly was 35 years old. He died from an overdose of alcohol and drugs, and nothing has changed my life more than that. Nothing. It's another thing that's almost impossible to describe.
Right.
Unless someone else has experienced it, trying to explain the feelings, the thoughts, the aftermath is nearly impossible. It might not be impossible to describe it, but it seems impossible to understand it fully.
Yeah, it's so deeply emotional, and it's so right there. So that was almost 5 years ago now?
That's just so incredible to me that 5 years. Not too long after Nick died, I started writing. It was one of the things that I needed avenues. I needed avenues of expression. Oddly enough, even after all the incredible experiences with dance, I couldn't bring myself to do it. I just couldn't do it. Nick was a musician, and music, even to this day, music is so painful for me sometimes that it took me a really long time, to let it back in. Not very long after he died, I wrote a piece, and the name of it was "I Want to Kill Time." It was unbearable to me that time could, essentially, I guess it was unbearable that life could go on, you know, and that seeing time pass I was angry. I I didn't want it to be true. I didn't want to get that far away from Nick. And time felt like that's what it was going to do.
Yeah.
I know that's not true now, but so soon after,
Right, that first stage. And so writing helped you somewhat to survive. Were there other things that helped?
Yes, and the writing I did not just alone, but I joined a bereavement writing group, and it still goes on to this day. We meet twice a month, and the compassion there that we have for each other is a balm. It's a balm. It doesn't cure us. It doesn't change what happened, but it's a balm. Just listening to each other's stories is so incredible.
Yeah.
And then a friend whose daughter had died a number of years before told me about a group called the Compassionate Friends, and she had them send me a packet of information. They're a national organization, about 650 chapters actually in the whole country, in every state. And it's a group that is specifically for bereaved parents, grandparents, and siblings. And so I got the information and I started looking around. I wanted to go to this group. There were no local chapters here. There wasn't one in Brattleboro. There wasn't one in Keene. There's got to be, I know there's got to be, but there wasn't one close enough to be feasible. So I researched how to start one because I needed it.
Yes, right.
I needed it.
Yeah.
So I talked with my therapist, and she had been in one that used to be in Peterborough, New Hampshire, but they had folded a long time ago. So I think she's the one actually who encouraged me to start it, and she would assist me, which she did. Very wisely, the Compassionate Friends organization recommends that to become a chapter leader and start a chapter, you need to be in the bereavement process for at least 2 years. It seemed harsh at first because I needed it so badly, so I had to wait. But now I understand.
You do.
Now I understand why they do that. The rawness of grief initially after your child dies it's debilitating.
Yeah.
It's debilitating. I would not have been able, really, to facilitate or lead the group really effectively, I think, that early on. It would have been too much.
Right.
So I did wait, but then I started, and we've been going since that was 2016.
In something that I read or something that you said, talking about coming together, a group of people who are coming together, bereavement for children, is a terrible comfort.
Yeah.
I thought that was an amazing phrase.
Yeah, it came to me, I don't know, pretty early on when we started the Compassionate Friends gatherings, because I would be sitting there and just, it's hard to talk about. You're listening to these stories that break your heart.
Yes.
This is someone's child, and you know what they're going through.
Right.
So you're listening to these stories that are so painful, and at the same time, there's a comfort in the sharing of the pain. It's It's an odd thing, but it's true.
And somehow I would think that both of those things coming together would enable you to not necessarily move forward, but enable you to bear it. Right.
Really, that's what it does. It enables us to all bear it. Mm-hmm. No matter what you say, what you do, how you feel, what you think, everyone in that room knows it. Mm-hmm. There's no judgment. There's no one's there trying to tell anybody how to do anything. Yeah. You're just there to hold each other, really, with the words.
And that's amazing. There are very few times in one's life when you can have that kind of experience, really.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
And certainly not with that kind of intensity.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, we when we find out there's going to be new people coming, we tell them how sorry we are that they're joining us and how we're glad they found us.
Yes, right. I would think that this process, it's you're really delving deep, and I think that I'm sure that there are different stages. As you go along, as you've been in the group longer and longer, you're going into different areas. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering for you anyway, did you, I would think that many things would come up that you start wondering about, whether it's your faith or what you've believed in or how you've lived your life and that kind of thing. And how was that for you? This is another hard area to describe. When I listen to other people's stories, when I hear things about, we call them visitations or signs or messages, from the beyond, I hear them and I believe them. I believe them. And and then because of who I am, where I come from, what I come out of, that part of me that it doesn't trust. There's a part of me that doesn't trust that they're real. But I do believe them. Mm-hmm. It's really hard. It's a bit of a dichotomy within me. But I can say now that I know that Nick exists. We can use somewhere, or there's just no words because we don't. How do we know? We can't talk about this stuff. It's beyond our little pea brains, human pea brains. Mm-hmm. But I know, having given birth to this human being, to this soul, he exists somewhere. His body's not in his body. But who he is, who he is, exists. Mm-hmm. And at times, the things that have been most profound for me about this area are my dreams. When Nick visits me in dreams, yeah.
It's like then I know he's here. Yeah. Then I know. Right. And I've had some other things. I do believe. Just when I talk about it, I don't know.
Well, they're real experiences.
They are
They're
real experiences,
and you just really can't discount that.
Yes.
And I think about what you're talking about, and the same things that you said about dance therapy and the experiences that you had there. They're inexpressible except by their own expression.
Exactly.
And that's kind of, I think that's what you're experiencing over and over again, and all the things that you had through dance therapy really, at least opened up, a whole area.
I know, and we talk about this, especially in the writing group. Something else has happened to all of us as a result of our trauma and our deep, deep grief, and it has to do with an opening up into compassion that I don't think we were capable of before. Right. Yeah. you asked a question earlier about, what has helped you. That is helping me. That is helping me. It's almost, it doesn't change anything. It sort of gives grief something to do.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
I think that's what's happening for me.
Yeah.
In everything that I'm moving toward right now.
Yes, and you're being supported in it too, which is a very, very, very big factor.
Yeah.
Bev, you talk a lot about this whole experiencing and carrying it, and it evolves, but it's always there. And I'm wondering a little bit about how you have found ways to acknowledge Nick. I know, like, in the Jewish religion, people have a yard site. Like a year afterwards, they light a candle, or they do a prayer, or they go to the grave site. Have you found ways, rituals, any kind of things?
Absolutely. Every year on his birthday, I hold a birthday celebration. And that was the first time I was able to bring music back in. I put on music, and I had lit 36 candles. It would have been his first birthday. And with an altar in the center and photographs and some totems. His totem animal was a wolf, so I had wolves around. And I put on the music, and I danced for Nick. I danced for me. I sobbed through the whole thing, but I did it.
Yeah.
So every year I've acknowledged his birthday and his death day. I do it differently with rituals. Sometimes alone, but sometimes I gather people.
Yeah.
I also bring him with me wherever I go. I have urn necklaces. Nick was an all over the town kind of guy. Very well loved. So when I go places where he's been, I sprinkle ashes.
Wow.
And I bring him into my daily life.
Yeah.
Every day I take a walk at sunrise to walk Lola, the puppy that came to us 1 year to the day after Nick died.
Wow.
And when I do that, I pray, and I talk to Nick while I'm walking, and I pray for our health and well-being, for myself and my daughter, who's going to have a baby, his sister, and I ask that he watch over us. I call them all my dead people, and I have a lot of dead people.
Yeah.
And I talk to them every morning. And in conversations with people, I don't want people to avoid Nick. I don't want people to avoid. I know a lot of people worry that they're going to, it'll hurt. What they don't understand is that it will hurt always.
Yeah, right.
It's never stopped, and it never will.
Yeah.
But for them to acknowledge him is another balm.
Yes.
They're
right.
remembering Nick. I want people to remember. I want the world to remember Nick,
Right.
So I try as much as I can to sort of make him still be a part of our lives.
Yeah. And I think that's really helpful for people to hear. And I'm sure that you talk about this in the Compassionate Friends as well, the things that are helpful and the things that are not helpful. And I think that because death still is such, it's not a taboo subject anymore, and it's certainly changed tremendously over the years for people to be able to articulate and talk about it. But for us to know on the outside that, sometimes maybe if you see someone shortly after they've lost someone, maybe just a hug. Right.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Sometimes it's just reach out and hold your hand and look in your eyes and cry with me for a minute. It's okay.
Yeah.
Tears are good.
It's great. Well, it's a wonderful organization too. I mean, I'm so glad that it exists in our community, and you hold the meetings every
third Sunday of the month from 2 to 4 p.m. at the West Village Meeting House.
Great. Okay. That's the information for the folks out in the audience. Yeah. Also, the wonderful thing, there are two things. One is that there's a scholarship fund for Nick.
Yeah.
And where do people go for that?
Vermont Jazz Center.
Great.
Incredible thing that a friend of Nick's made it all happen.
Oh, great. That's wonderful.
Can I say his name?
Sure.
David Williamson. Thank you, David.
Great. Yeah, we love shout-outs on the show. That's really...
He made it possible. And every year I go to the concert at which the student who is awarded the scholarship performs in the concerts at the week-long workshop at the Putney School.
Putney School, yes.
And they invite me every year, and I get to meet the people. Oh my God.
That's wonderful. That's another wonderful way.
My God.
Yeah, of having it move
Eugene,
forward.
Oh my God. Thank you, Eugene.
Yeah, another good shout out. Not long ago, in I think both papers, you had what is called a compassionate story. Can you tell us just a little bit about that?
It's part of the Charter for Compassionate Communities, I think, something like that. I was approached because someone had seen the calendar listing for the Compassionate Friends from that organization and contacted me and asked, explained who they were, that every month they have a story of compassion in the Reformer and the Commons, and they solicit those stories from the community. And they heard about the Compassionate Friends. Did we have a story? I said, I'd be willing to tell a story, but I don't want to write it. Will somebody interview me? And somebody did.
Oh, great.
Yeah, this wonderful human being, Jim Levinson, from that group, came up to the meeting house and sat with me, and I had the most profound experience with him telling this story, and they had it printed in the September issue, the second week in September, I think it was, of the Commons and the Reformer, and just, I was reading the story going, oh my God.
It turned out pretty good.
He wrote such a beautiful...
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And this is something that's going to be run successively in the papers.
Yeah, they do it. They do it every week, or maybe just once a month. You can look it up, though.
So in closing, Bev, I would love to have you just read, this is, Bev gave a talk for Turning Point a couple years ago, I believe. And it was the first time you came out and talked about your son dying. But if you could just read those last two paragraphs, it's just so lovely.
Conquer the fear, shun the judgment and talk. Ask questions. Open your hearts and listen carefully to each other. These things are simple, but without them, I'm not sure I would still be here, talking with you tonight. I'd like to end with these words by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. The reality is that you will grieve forever. You will not get over the loss of a loved one. You will learn to live with it. You will heal and rebuild yourself around the loss you have suffered. You will be whole again, but you will never be the same. Nor should you be the same, nor would you want to.
Thank you, Bev. Thanks. Thanks so much for being on.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much to all of you for being with us today. We will have information at the end of the show of how to get in touch with the Compassionate Friends and Beverly. We will see you next time on Here We Are.